We all have our reasons for watching the great show Survivor. Some people love watching the challenge aspect of the game, and seeing the wild ways production can push contestants to their limits. Some people like watching the social dynamics, and seeing how different personalities from all walks of life mesh with each other for 39 days. There's people who love the twist that Survivor puts on to keep players on their toes. Of course, you have the fans who love the gameplay, and seeing the top winners dominate, underdogs emerging, and all the ruthless blindsides. But no matter the reason you watch Survivor, I think everyone who watches it does want to see who in fact the sole survivor ends up being, hence the name of the show. Again, you could be someone who watches Survivor strictly for the challenges and have no clue what's going on strategy-wise, and even then, you still want to see who comes out on top. It's what makes the show interesting, to see which person out of a group of 16 to 20 people ultimately outlasts everyone else. So with the winner being such an important part of Survivor, and in some cases even determining if the season is received well or not, it's important for the editors to give the winner some sort of satisfying winner's arc for the hardcore and casual audience to walk away from satisfied. Hence the creation of the winner's edit. The winner's edit is what people look into that make a player stand out from the rest of the pack when it comes to their chances of winning the season. And it's not just a simple who's getting the most screen time. People look at who's getting the most meaningful content out of the cast, who's getting content or credit in situations where they don't need to be. If there's a tight alliance or duo, who is being shown the most or being perceived as the biggest jury threat. The list goes on and on. It's why players like Natalie White and Sophie are so rare, because instead of a winner's edit, we get a why they lost edit from Russell and Coach, which obviously is a lot less satisfying for the viewer and has to be very frustrating for the winner. Someone like Tony dominated the screen time in Cagayan, but he was such an over-the-top character that people thought there's no way he could be the winner, as opposed to people like LJ, Wu, and Spencer, who got a more prototypical winner's edit. And then you have the very rare cases like Bob and Chris Underwood, whose wins are so random and unexplainable that there's really no way to edit them to be a satisfying or understandable winner. But the problem with the winner's edit is that it's twofold. Yes, we don't want the casuals to piss on Natalie White for 12 years due to such a bad edit that she can't control, but then it's also disappointing for us hardcore fans to see a guy like Tommy, an extremely bland character, get all the important confessionals and random content, making his win incredibly obvious very early on in IOI. Even in Australian Survivor, with at least 24 episodes in all 6 seasons, every winner has had some obvious hints on why they won that season, which again, hardcore fans can catch on right away. So the winner's edit is a tricky thing for Survivor, as it's tough to give a winner a story without making their win so obvious. Which is why I guess Survivor South Africa has completely thrown the concept of the winner's edit out the window, and man, is it absolutely fascinating to watch. Spoilers ahead if you have not seen all Survivor South Africa seasons, but I want to go back in time a few years ago to 2018, when Survivor South Africa came off a 4-year hiatus with a new production team and TV channel, and an unofficial rebirth to their franchise. With this season essentially being the first big-time season for South Africa, it made sense the editors gave 34-year-old pastor Werner Jober an obvious winner's edit, as they really wanted to set their franchise up for the long run for the casuals, with a winner they could absolutely get behind, and a man who dominated the game, although for us hardcore fans, his winner's edit was a little too obvious. But to be fair, Werner did dominate Survivor SA Philippines, and it wasn't just the edit playing it up. He started the game in control of the old Mindanao tribe, and took control of the majority alliance going into the merge, found 2 idols, saved himself with one of them, and played the other one on another castaway the last time he could use it at the final 5, to pull off an incredible blindside. And best of all, the person he got out that round just so happened to be his only competition edgic-wise in Katinka. So, at the final 4, Werner was against purple-edited Annalise, a player that nobody took seriously in Jean, and the hated Tom. His win was so obvious at this point that the pitch from Jean to kin him out fell on deaf ears to me, and even when she got even more control by winning the Final 4 immunity, I still had no doubt that Werner would survive this vote. And after the challenge, when he started plotting with both Tom and Annalise about pulling off a 2-1-1 vote, suddenly his edit made even more sense, and it also made a lot more sense why everyone was hyping up the season as one of the best of all time. The winner of the rebranded version of South Africa would dominate the season, and when he suddenly was in trouble, he would pull off a 2-1-1 vote to save himself. It would be unreal to watch. But then, during that tribal, a night that I'll never forget as a massive Survivor fan, Werner didn't pull off a 2-1-1 vote. He didn't even go to fire. He was unanimously voted out, and one of the biggest and most obvious winners ever was voted out, and in my opinion, is the biggest viewer blindside in Survivor history. I mean, just think about how crazy it is that the edit was leading me to believe that the rare 2-1-1 vote was far more of a likely outcome than the obvious unanimous vote that would take out the big-time player of the season. And all of a sudden, I was heading into the finale scratching my head at who could possibly be the winner. I ultimately decided on Jean, because while her edit made her look bad at times, she wasn't nearly knocked down by the edit as Tom had been, and was far more visible than Annalise. And it was her that got the credit for taking out Werner, similar to that of Jenna taking out Rob. And when Jean won her second immunity challenge and also got the ability to vote out a jury member, I was even more convinced, especially when she made the smart move and took out Annalise, bringing the hated Tom with her to the final two. And although she made a questionable decision in eliminating Werner from the jury, who you would assume wouldn't be a bitter juror, I was still pretty convinced she had the win wrapped up. While it was shocking they didn't give Jean more of an underdog type edit and made her more rootable, considering she was the definition of an underdog winner, she really came on at the end, which is often the most important part of Survivor for the players and the fans watching. And again, look at who she was sitting next to, Tom freaking Schwartz, a man who constantly got into arguments with people, including most of the jury members, was shown to be an absolute pig, was given numerous snarky confessionals, and confessionals from other contestants in almost every episode about just how much they hated Tom. And it's not like he was a guy who was a strategic mastermind either. He was pretty much dragged to the end, in fact turning on the minority alliance to give Werner's alliance even more numbers to dominate the merge. He was one of, if not the biggest goats in Survivor history. But then the final tribal council came, and Jean started out by saying the biggest reason why she got to the end was luck. And then she said it again, and again. And pretty much her entire final tribal council was her stating over and over again that the only reason why she was sitting at the end was due to luck. But hey, while it was bad, we've seen players like Bob literally say he had no strategy at the final tribal council and went on to win the game. And with people still not seeming to respect Tom, with the mayor of Ponderosa, Vusi, even calling him out, angrily claiming that nobody respected him, I was still confident going into the vote that Jean would win. But then, South Africa once again left me speechless for days. In a nearly unanimous 6-1 vote, Tom Schwartz won Survivor South Africa Philippines. How? Just how? Again, this man was constantly crapped on by other players in basically every episode, did nothing of note strategically, and above all else, he had one of, if not the worst winner's edit in Survivor history. But that is exactly what made the season so great, and I now understood why everyone praised this season. I made a video months ago on why every Survivor fan should watch Survivor SA Philippines, and while I did praise the characters and gameplay, the main thing I praised was the editing. The fact that the editors in their first season as a production team pulled off such an unconventional winner like this was insane, and I absolutely adored the balls of it, knowing that US and Australian Survivor would never. South Africa didn't mess with Tom, and edited out all the bad parts to make him look like a hard-working, respected man, nor did they make him look a lot more strategic than he really was. They showed off exactly who he was without BS and anything, which goes for all the cast too. And the final four to the final vote of Tom turned this season from a good season into an all-time great season due to its shocking ending, and in my opinion, the best international season in Survivor history. Again, even with unconventional winners like Sophie, Bob, and Tony, we were at least given some reason why they won. The only real reason we were given for Tom winning was due to Jean's all-time bad final tribal council performance. It's just insane. So insane and so different that while I and most hardcore Survivor fans adore this season, the casual audience hates it. Because again, the winner of a season often determines how fans feel about it. And maybe other than Chris Underwood, there's not a more unsatisfying winner in Survivor history than Tom Schwartz. But the one other thing that you could say about Tom, whether this is a good or bad thing, is that he was a massive character, and while obviously portrayed in a negative light, he played an important role in the season. But that brings us to the most recent season of South African Survivor, and the 8th season overall, Survivor SA Immunity Island. And a winner that may be even more shocking than Tom, as this person wasn't nearly as hated or presented badly to the audience like Tom had been, but this person had no type of winner's edit, and wasn't shown in any way to be a big-time winner candidate, especially compared to some of the other players this season. Everyone, meet Nicole Williams, winner of Survivor South Africa Immunity Island, and I still can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth. The 25-year-old digital marketer wasn't really thought of high in the preseason, as she was seen as the typical hot babe recruit who wouldn't be super strategically heavy and would mostly be along for the ride in her alliance while being a great sociable player. And honestly, that's exactly how she played. She started the game on Zamba and found herself in the majority alliance, particularly close with Marisha and Amy, and was in a good spot for the next 2 episodes. And when the tribe swapped, she got a pretty good draw, as Zamba had the 6-3 numbers over the Vuna, and in the only tribal council she attended during the second swap, Teresa pretty much played herself out of the game, to where in fact even the ex-Vunas of Tyson and Huron were the ones to vote her out. Then at the third tribe swap, Nicole got an even better draw, reuniting with her majority alliance, and her tight Amy and Marisha trio. However, the third version of Vunas never went to tribal, and Nicole breezed her way into the merge without much of a problem. But then at the merge, everything went bad. It was a 6-6 numbers game between the OG Vuna and Zamba. Unfortunately for Nicole and Zamba, they thought Anesu and Santoni were on their side, So when they told them Chappie was the target, this gave them the ability to tell Tyson to play as idol on Chappies, and the OG Vunas would take over the numbers, ultimately choosing Marisha as their target. This was also notably a bad look for Nicole, as she begged Rhaenyra to play as idol on her to protect herself in the OG Zombas, but it obviously went to no avail, and Nicole is now down the numbers, lost her close ally, and begged the idol be played on her when she wasn't the target, and things were now not looking good. After Sean was picked off next, we got another big turning point in Nicole's game, but again, not exactly in a good way. The producers wanted to shake things up and introduce the Tide Destinies twist, in which players would compete and be voted out in pairs. And unbelievably, the worst possible outcome happened, as the OG Vuna and Zomba were all paired with one another. Luckily for Nicole and her partner Anella, she won immunity and half of the 4 minority Zombas were now safe, now give them even more of a fighting chance. Unfortunately, Nicole then made a disastrous decision. Instead of bringing along 2 Vunas, which would not only give Nicole and Anel the chance to strategize at the reward, but would also give Amy and Rhaenyra a chance to persuade Vunas to turn on each other back at camp. She instead did the honorable thing and brought her allies and friends of Rhaenyra and Amy, along with her and Anella, to spend the day together at the water park. Now, granted, it was already probably unlikely that Vuna were going to flip on each other, especially since flipping on one would be flipping on 2 people, which would just make the numbers even once again. But still, this was such a bad decision by Nicole, as even Amy and Rhaenyra expressed their displeasure with her decision, as they knew she unintentionally tanked their games, as they had pretty much now no chance to save themselves. Obviously not a great look for the season's winner. And while Rhaenyra went down fighting, he and Amy were ultimately voted out, leaving Nicole and Anella as the final Zomba left standing. But thankfully for the two, they were no longer seen as threats, and Vuna finally started to turn on each other. In fact, they actually became the swing votes at the next tribal council between the 2 factions of Warda, Tyson, and Kieran, and Chappies, Anesu, and Santoni, and they ultimately went with the former, voting out Anesu. The next episode, Nicole continued to be in a non-threatening position. However, the theme of the season, Immunity Island, played a big part in it. She was automatically safe at the final 7, and Chappies and Santoni idled out Warda, and at the final 6, the final time Immunity Island came into play, she used her fire advantage she won from there, which would make the 2 highest vote getters go to fire, and the loser would go home, even if they had the second highest total. Now, while you could say this was a very risky move for Nicole to put her game up to fire, and potentially send herself home when she didn't receive the most amount of votes, that final 6 round was crazy, with basically everyone's name being thrown out there to go home, and this was absolutely the right move for Nicole. In the end, Tyson beat Santoni, and we went into the final 5 with Kieran and Tyson as an obvious pair, and after Chappies won immunity, there was really no reason not to break them up, and Kieran was gone, which also basically guaranteed Nicole and Nell the final 3, as Chappies and Tyson were both gunning for each other. But after Chappies won his 5th immunity, and then learned it would be a final 2 instead of a final 3, he wanted to get Anella out, feeling he was a bigger challenge threat than Tyson. However, Tyson pulled off one of the dumbest moves ever and voted for Nicole when Chappies literally told him to vote for Anella. So at the final immunity challenge, Nicole had her shining bright moment in the game, as not only did she beat the challenge beast Chappies, but she put the final nail in his coffin, voted him out, and the Destiny's twist that unintentionally brought Nicole and Nella together at the merge had overcome 6-2 numbers, and were in the final 2. An even more shocking final 2 in my opinion than Jean and Tom. At the final tribal council, Nicole used her charm and big time clutch victory to pander to the jury, and in the end was crowned the sole survivor in an 8-1 vote. So when looking at Nicole's game, there's nothing particularly bad, maybe other than the horrendous reward picking decision, but she played a game that you would expect from a quiet, under-the-radar pretty lady like her. She was sociable, and was in a majority and core alliance, held her own in strategy and challenges, but was never a big enough threat to be targeted over the other big threats down the stretch. And she was the one instead of Jean to pull off the Jenna Maraska, and take out the final hurdle at the end to win the game. Nothing exciting, but certainly less crazy than a guy like Tom winning. But once again, the South African edit made this win an absolute shocker. Watching the season live, there was frontrunners changing every week, but Nicole was never one of them. And going to the merge, the top picks were Tyson, Rhaenyra, Amy, and Anesu, with Chappies and Santoni maybe having a slight chance to pull it off. Nicole was nowhere near top candidate to win, and in fact, I'd argue she was third least likely to win out of the 12 players heading to the merge, only ahead of Sean and Marisha. Because while Nicole nobly had a confessional in every episode, a lot of it seemed forced, and just the usual production trying to give everyone their fair share of time. While the other players at the top not only had more confessionals, but more meaningful confessionals. I mean, just look at some of the top contenders heading to the merge, and how their edit compared to Nicole's. For Zamba, the top contender was Rhaenyra, as he had received twice as many confessionals as Nicole. His relationship with Amy was highlighted far more than Nicole's relationship with Amy, and with the winner usually having a partner in crime and relationship highlighted, that was a great look for Rhaenyra's winning chances. Plus, we were even shown things that never had any payoff. Like right before the merge, we saw him make a connection with Chappies, which you would have thought would have had some sort of payoff in the merge, whether the two had a secret alliance or Rainier used Chappies as a shield during the merge. But literally the next episode, Rainier and the rest of Zamba targeted Chappies, so the entire storyline felt really pointless. It makes you question why this relationship was highlighted. But with everyone thinking Rainier was a clear frontrunner, this made Amy a dark horse contender, as again, we were shown the two's relationship, and a lot of times, the quieter but still featured player in a duo wins, as the editors highlight more things the partner with more screen time did wrong. But this relationship was highlighted so much, only for them to go out at the final 10. Now, I guess since they did go out together, that explains why the relationship was expanded, but still, why is the winner of the season, who was also in a relationship with both Rainier and Amy, not shown nearly as much as opposed to a duo that ended up being early merge boots? Again, you would have expected Nicole to get the edit that say Amy had during her time in the game. So with two big frontrunners out of the way, the new favorite became Anesu, and if anyone had a clear winner's edit, it was her, as it was almost too perfect. She was given constant screen time throughout the season despite not being the most interesting character in the world, and a lot of it was game related, as we heard her game thoughts more than anyone throughout the season. We also heard from just about everyone all game about how much they trusted Anesu, with even the minority Zama feeling like she was the best option to work with. So not only was Anesu in the best position edit-wise heading into the final 8, but in the best position game-wise as well. And at the very beginning of the episode, her target Tyson immediately got the classic downfall episode confessional, saying he was in a great position and he felt safe, making it even more obvious Anesu would take out Tyson this episode and have an easy ride to the end. But Anoa and Nicole, after saying they wanted to work with Anesu, sided with Tyson's cocky alliance, and Anesu was gone. So at this point, Tyson was now the clear frontrunner. Again, he checked off all the boxes for a Survivor winner's edit, even more so considering the circumstances. He got a massive amount of content throughout the game, despite being one of the biggest GameBot personalities in Survivor history. We were constantly highlighted of his alliance with Warda, and especially his duo alliance with Kieran, who had been with each other throughout the game. And again, regarding highlighting a duo in a winner's edit, in this case, Tyson having far more content than his duo partner helped his cause as opposed to Kieran, because most viewers and players agreed that Kieran was a far better player and strategic force behind the duo. So when the less strategic player of the duo, who has the personality of a rock, gets far more content than his partner in crime, that's great for Tyson's winner's chances, because why would they highlight Tyson so much as opposed to Kieran? And at the final 5, after being targeted for 3 votes in a row, Tyson actually got an incredibly lucky break that he hurt his leg, which made him less of a threat compared to Kieran, and when the two were finally split apart, it was Kieran who went first. And all the way up until the final 4 when it looked like Tyson was dead man walking, Chappies gave him a chance to win his second fire-making challenge of the season, adding even more to his resume. But then this Big Moves player made a horrendous decision to vote for Nicole and Vanilla, and once again, the frontrunner was voted out. So at the final 3, I was in a state of happy shock, as I was now convinced that Francis Chapman, aka Chappies, was going to win Survivor. I mean, there's no way he couldn't win, right? Nicole and Anella's seem so unimportant to the season's storyline, and Chappies is literally one of the best characters in Survivor history. He had nearly 100 confessionals this season despite the even split among the 20-person cast. He was adored by fans and the other players. He was a challenge beast, tying the all-time immunity record. He saved Santoni in a challenge, and due to this, was nicknamed the Aquaman. He stole rights from the disliked alliance, and he was given a bevy of positive content, with his closest ally also having the second most amount of confessionals this season. And I also figured that the reason why so many players received Game Body winner edits this season was because the editors wanted to shock us in a great way, and have one of the best characters in Survivor history come out on top. So while he was an absolute over-the-top character who definitely didn't fit the winner's edit stereotype, it made sense that South Africa would give their version of Tony Vlacho such a large edit, especially since it seemed he would break the all-time immunity challenge record to earn himself the win. But then he lost, and then he was voted out. And we were left with probably the most unexpected final 2 in history in Nicole and Anella. Now, as unexpected as a Nicole win would be, an Anella win would be even more unexpected, as he was also a quiet character relative to everyone else. He had no real relationships highlighted in the game, and he made the biggest blunder in the game by backing out on a massive move to blindside Kieran, simply because Santoni offered to split the votes instead. Due to this, I and many other people thought he would be this season's Doral. But then, the final tribal council came, and he absolutely dominated the screen time, as there were times when a juror would ask a question, and Anel would give a 2-minute answer, while Nicole either got nothing, or repeated over and over again that she beat the challenge beast Chappies. So going into the vote, I thought we were going to see a Philippines 2.0, and that the person who owned their game the most at the final tribal council would win, as it would make sense to the audience right at the very end. But despite Anela giving some in-depth answers, and I'd say taking up a good 75% of the screen time during the final tribal council, he was damn near shut out, and Nicole shockingly won Survivor South Africa Community Island in an 8-1 vote. And again, I'm not saying Nicole didn't deserve this win. Was she the strongest winner ever? Of course not. But she was well positioned throughout the game, was really good socially, and took out one of the biggest challenge beasts in Survivor history. It's just that her edit made no sense as to explaining why she won. Why is Rhaenyra and Amy's relationship being highlighted instead of Nicole's relationships? Why were Nesu and Tyson built up so much despite being such uninteresting characters who didn't win the season, thus undeserving of all their in-game content? Why were we not given more personal and game content in general from Nicole throughout the season? Heck, why was Anela, who Nicole nearly swept in the jury vote, given all the content at the final tribal council? And the thing is, US Survivor is known to give the classic under-the-radar edits to players like Danny Boatwright, Denise Stapley, and the big comparison to Nicole, Michelle Fitzgerald. But to me, none of those comparisons come close to Nicole. I wasn't watching Survivor during most of these under-the-radar winter seasons, but even edgily back then, I don't think anyone had Danny Boatwright in the bottom 5 of least likely to win Guatemala when the merge started. And I don't think there's a winner in Survivor history whose edit battled as many winner edits as Nicole did against the likes of Rhaenyra, Tyson, and heck, even at the end, freaking Jappies. And I've heard people say that there's some subtitle hints throughout the season, and on the rewatch, you notice Nicole a lot better when knowing she wins. But again, when you compare the subtitle hints of Nicole to players like, say, Anesu and Amy, to me, it's not even comparable, because their edits flat out scream winners edit far more than Nicole's edit. Nicole isn't the only random winner in Survivor South Africa either. Obviously, we've talked about Tom, but in Season 2, Lorette Mustert beat the clear winner Edgley and Grant Clark in a 3-2 vote. Yes, a 3-2 vote. And not only was Grant the clear frontrunner Edgley, but there were also so many other players that season who got far more content than Lorette, such as Mandla, Angie, and Dyke. I've never watched seasons 1, 2, or 4, but I've heard that pretty much all those winners are pretty on their radar as well, and apparently, one of those winners played a dominant game, yet was still under-edited. But the thing with seasons 1 through 4 for South Africa Survivor is that the production quality was that of a college Survivor season, so I can't really look too much into the editing and storytelling of Survivor South Africa Season 2, as opposed to Season 8. Really, the only seasons to feature the typical winners edit in Survivor South Africa are the winners of Season 5 and Season 7. But one could argue those wins are so dominant that you couldn't possibly under-edit their wins. But let me make one thing very clear about South African Survivor. I absolutely adore everything about these random winners. Survivor SA producers are apparently massive Survivor fans, and I'm sure they know just as well as anyone how frustrating it can be to know the winner of the season 4 episodes into the season. And man, was it so fun as a massive Survivor fan to be shocked not once, but twice due to the winner of a season. And especially for Immunity Island and watching it live, it was so fun to see everyone debating on who would win every week, as seemingly every episode after the merge, we saw a massive character be taken out, with the frontrunners changing each and every week. And honestly, the gameplay for the season was decent at best, with some incredibly bland game body characters. But much like Philippines, this season will be so much more loved by me than the casual fan, due to its insane unpredictability. And one more massive positive, the winner of South African Survivor can be extremely different in 2 different ways. Like, Tom is arguably the most negative edited winner in Survivor history, but a massive character, while Nicole is simply so surprising due to how many other winner edits there were this season, and she was definitely not one of them, and in general, was an extremely quiet character compared to the rest. It makes me so excited for future seasons, because with US having their stereotypical edits to fit certain types of winners, and Australian Survivor has basically gone all in on making their audience happy with their winner, it's so nice to know that South Africa will keep me guessing literally up until the final vote. And I'm so grateful for this franchise, and I hope it has a long and successful future ahead, with more and more Survivor fans realizing that this is the best English-speaking Survivor franchise there currently is, because man, is it absolutely insane to watch. If you want to rewatch some Survivor SA seasons, I'll link a couple places to watch them down below. And even though it's obviously a long ways away, sign up to the groups The Tribe Has Spoken on Facebook to watch future SA seasons in live time. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and hit that like and subscribe button, and share this video with all your friends. And also, be on the lookout soon for a special video dedicated to one of my all-time favorite South African Survivor players. Have a good one, guys.